This is the inaugural episode of the Misinformed Truth Podcast. I'm Manveer. This is my co-host Lamar, and this is really interesting. So just before we begin, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of our backgrounds. So first, pretty much the thing that you need to know, or what inspired this podcast, is that we come from debate backgrounds. So politics has been a big part of our lives. I've done 4 years of high school debate and 4 years of college debate, and Lamar here has done the equivalent amount, 4 years in high school and 3+ years in college. So what that means is that politics has been a big part of our lives, and therefore we're creating a podcast to really talk about what we talk about on a daily basis. Ever since kind of debate's been over for us, we just have these long phone conversations and where we kind of talk about politics and yell at each other through the phone in the Bluetooth car ride home. So we were like, let's just make this into a podcast. So first, let's talk about the goals of this podcast. So Lamar, tell me, this was really your idea, your brainchild. We passed it back and forth. We kind of flipped this off and flipped this back on, but really tell me what you were thinking when you wanted to create this podcast and really bankroll this whole enterprise.
I thought maybe there's an opening for us right now because I see that you and I, with our backgrounds, academically speaking, that we can provide a voice that is unique, that is going to be separating itself from those very low tier political entry individuals that are putting up videos there with, I think, not that much, content or analysis in their videos. And, we're obviously going to do the research, beforehand, by providing the information to you guys, but we're also going to provide not just like a summary, but more specific analysis that maybe the media isn't doing for us, and they kind of just want us to assume. For example, one of the big things that always, kind of triggered me was like the news during 2004 when the Iraq invasion happened, Yes, they were laying it out there that, Saddam Hussein wasn't personally involved in 9/11, but they never made an explicit headline. And as a result, there was one poll that really scared me that 90% of Americans thought that Saddam Hussein was personally involved in 9/11. And, I get it. The news media did state it, but not in an explicit way. And that's where we come in. We have to do the analysis for the people because, unfortunately, while we live in this area of this time where we have so much news, sometimes it's a lot to navigate. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to be the people that navigate for you, to make sure that you don't get lost and are able to follow the right trails.
Exactly. I think like the one thing that people really like when we go to them in our own friend circles and stuff like that is that they really value the insight we have because we look at things at multiple perspectives. And I think the audience for this podcast is everyday people like you, who try to navigate the kind of flood of information that's coming out. And when we say these other podcasts and these other YouTube content creators that comment on politics that are fairly new, we don't want to say that you're really shitty or anything like that. We're just saying that we might have something different to offer, a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more polished than yourselves, because you might be navigating politics for the first time. And again, everyone has a voice. This is America. This is the democratic experiment that's been happening for a long time. So we're just exercising that same ability on the YouTube platform and other platforms as well, wherever podcasts happen. So really the goals of this podcast is that it's really to embrace who we are as former debaters and as former people who were really, really engorged in politics and weaponize politics to win arguments, to win rounds, and therefore to eventually win tournaments. So that's what we did. And this is for everybody. We're not doing this for debaters. It's by debaters for everybody, because what we recognize is that debate was really important for us to create a discourse. And if everybody in the world did debate, the world would have progressed so much further, because at least we would have the skills to communicate what we see in front of us, and people lack that right now. So this is really for you, for you to really understand the average person, so we can kind of digest it for you kind of. And again, we're not forcing an opinion down your throat. Multiple times me and Lamar disagree because both of us will take different sides of the spectrum on an argument. We'll take a topic of the day and I'll take the left side and he'll take the right side, or sometimes I'll take the right side and he'll take the left side, just for the sake of argument. And what we realize, we have these profound realizations about society, these observations we make, and we're like, why don't we just put this down on recording and let everybody hear this, because I think there's some value into what we have to say. So that's the goal for this podcast, to really just understand and really recognize that news is so overwhelming, and we're just here to analyze it and kind of break it down for you.
And one man thing, going back to the idea of like what the main goal and agenda of this podcast is. Again, as Mayor noted, we're here to bring our ideas to the table, but we also understand we need to generalize some of our things to a more broader audience. For example, like me and Manuel were discussing earlier, if it wasn't my dreams, I would probably focus more on anything on foreign policy only, because that was my what I enjoyed the most, especially when I was in debate. Sure, I do like talking about like political stuff regarding U.S. domestic policy, but I understand that in order to broader our audience and make things more relevant to you, we need to have a wide range of topics.
Yeah, Lamar is like really known to go into the weeds and bore me to death about like the specifics of stuff. So I definitely will curtail him back on that. I even encouraged him to focus more not just on the news, but we're going to also talk about things like in culture, like for example, the impending future of Kevin Durant will be talked about on the podcast. We'll even talk about gaming news and how it's pervased the economy, how this billion-dollar industry. We'll talk about green technology. We'll talk about new technologies that are happening. We'll talk about big moves that are happening in the international space outside of just politics. We'll talk about fashion, everything like that. This is a culture and news podcast, but we'll always be news first and we'll analyze stuff. So with that being said, hopefully if you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below, and then let's just jump right into it. Our biggest story that's happening this week is the Iran conflict that's happening with the United States. So right now we have here that Iran says it refrained from shooting down a U.S. plane with 35 on board.
Let's backtrack a little bit.
Right.
Do you think we should give the full background of the Iran thing from 2 weeks ago?
Exactly. Actually, I think we should even go further. Let's try to pick the whole picture.
Sure.
With
like from the Obama administration.
Okay. And the biggest nexus point of all this conflict comes from the Iran nuclear deal. Break it down for us, Lamar.
Sure. So as we all know, President Obama's one of his signature deals with creating better positive relations with Iran was the Iran deal. In the Iran deal, there was a situation where we as Americans were fearful of potential nuclear development of from the Iranian government. While the Obama administration in their deal with Iran did not necessarily create a permanent solution, it was a temporary delay in their development of plutonium.
At least a step in the right direction.
Yes. And, while many Republicans have disagreements, with the Obama administration,
pretty much all
regulations regarding like how you would specifically make a guarantee they were following and abiding by those regulations set by the Iran deal. Mm-hmm. Again, it is better than nothing. From what we saw from the Republican Party, I mean, from my opinion, they weren't providing any legitimate alternatives besides further aggregation and
it was just this like vehement request for better deal. And Trump campaigned on, we need a better deal. He tweeted out this deal is horrible for the American people. And his alternative was rather what you prophesize is just basically just cut the deal. And now we're seeing the repercussions of that.
It's similar with the Obamacare, he wants to repeal, but
exactly.
You got to repeal and replace. You can't just do it because both Democrats and Republicans are on the same page. They don't want any Iran with a nuclear, development. The situation is how do you make sure that occurs? With the Dems, it seems they want to do it more diplomatically in the means of actually doing in the following agreement as they did with the Obama administration. But while the Republican Party isn't explicitly saying it, it seems that not all of them, but there seems to be a fraction there between the Republican Party in this direction. But they do want to take a John Bolton approach where they basically go on with military altercation, and that's the only way to actually guarantee that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons.
And it's so funny you say that because my debate coach's husband, he was saying, he's a libertarian, he was saying if Hillary wins the election, go ahead, you better ramp up on those defense stocks because we're going to war. But now look at this. Yeah. We're on the cusp of that actual war. So now
to clarify, that was more in regards to Syria, though.
Exactly. Definitely at that point. But let's jump into it. So we had the Iran deal. With the Trump administration, we broke the Iran deal. And now ever since that break of faith on the Iran deal with the change of administration, things have been tenuous with the Iran leadership and the White House. So now leading up to this tension that exists between Iran and the Trump presidency created this mistrust. Bring me to the conflict. What happened? What are the facts? And what can we, the people, surmise from that?
So approximately 1 month ago, the U.S. State Department actually declared the Iranian military a fraction of it as an actual terrorist group, and that kind of was the beginning of like the recent tensions that have occurred this year. Consequently, we definitely saw that there were interesting situations going on in regards to oil tankers. There were two incidents in particular. There was one incident where one of them was supposedly some sort of explosion occurred on one, and the second one, another explosion was occurred to some degree. But there were some degrees of conflation in the second ship that was attacked. In the second ship, we had the U.S. State Department actually providing intelligence on the field, stating that, oh, the Iranian government was definitely involved because we see some sort of ship approaching the oil tanker and attaching a magnetic mine to it and leading to the explosion of it. But there's actually conflicting intelligence from the actual owner of the tanker. So the tanker was owned by a Japanese company, and the CEO of the Japanese company himself noted that that was not the case because according to the intelligence in the United States, they claim that the explosion occurred at sea level, where, in their video that the Iranians placed that mine towards the bottom. But according to the Japanese, they are saying that some sort of projectile hit them, leading to explosion on the upper deck of the bridge, which doesn't kind of line up. So again, we're not saying necessarily that both could have not occurred, but there is some suspicion to note that maybe the United States may be fabricating this intelligence to provoke Iran into some sort of altercation, which leads to the drone strike. Or not the drone strike, the flying of the drone.
Yeah. So basically, what that surmises from is that the drone strike that recently happened was basically a UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle. Yeah, UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle. Basically, it flew over international skies, international space, over Iran, and it was probably doing reconnaissance, God knows what. Iran thought it was within its rights because it monitored the UAV in its own airspace. What that means, Iran shot it down. Iran shot a $100 million plus UAV where United States claims that it was in international airspace and Iran claims it was in its own airspace. So now we have two conflicting forms of violence that has been perpetrated by quote unquote Iran. Iran says it was within its right to shoot down that drone, and then Iran said that it actually wasn't us that blew up that tanker. However, there's conflicting evidence that says that actually it was Iran. The U.S. State Department, I believe the Pentagon, released a video showing that Iran fast boats, or speedboats, I forgot what they're called, were actually on the scene of the video of where the oil tanker was shown to be exploded. And basically, what this means is that it's a huge can of worms right now. Iran's denying everything or saying it's within the right to do what it did to that drone. And then the United States over here saying you weren't allowed to shoot that drone because we were following the rules, and you shot down an oil tanker that was critical for us and also threatens our stability in the world. Now,
to go back to the drone part, though, I would like to note that from what I've read in, most intelligence, the evidence that the U.S. is saying that it was international air doesn't seem to be going fair on their side. Right. From what I'm saying, it clearly was Iranian airspace. But again, the United States is sticking to their gun, and obviously they're not going to backtrack on this.
Exactly. This is, and we're not trying to defend Iran here by trying to say that, Iran is also playing the same game as the United States by United States is denying any involvement in the UAV being unauthorized to be shot down. And then Iran is saying that we didn't do anything to blow up that tanker. And what we're just saying that this is predictable, that Iran feels itself as the United States of the Middle East, they kind of think of themselves as the hegemon, and they feel that they're playing the same war games as the United States, and they feel that they can do exactly whatever we can.
I mean, it seems kind of like, weird to me that the United States didn't see this coming. I mean, like, you pushing them out of their deal, there were sanctions on the line, and, while there were some European countries involved with this deal too, so even though the U.S., countries, backed out, like Iran was still getting benefits in Europe, the U.S. comes out and tells Europe, hey, back off, this is like, you're helping a country that's, funds state-sponsored terrorism, such as, Hezbollah and stuff like that. And so that's the problem. They're putting pressure even on their European allies that didn't decide to even leave with the deal, but now they are consequently leaving.
Exactly. And here's the situation. There's two new developments that came out. So Shinzo Abe, Shinzo Abe, who's the prime minister of Japan, went to the Iranian government and proposed a deal that was supported by Donald Trump. However, the Iranians backed off that deal in terms of trying to calm things down and trying to figure out a way out of this can of worms. Not only that, Iran is effectively has a gun to the head of the European Union, who supported this deal, and European countries, by saying that, look, we're going to enrich uranium. We're going to break the deal unless you ease sanctions off of us. So the deal, the Iran nuclear deal that the Obama administration set up, basically said it was a partnership with European countries to Iran to say, we're going to ease off the sanctions if you ease off the nuclear development, because you can use the nuclear technology for energy, but you can't use it to enrich uranium to make nuclear bombs. And Iran has been keeping up with their side of it. However, United States backed off that deal off suspicions that weren't verified. And now the Europeans still haven't kept their promise on getting rid of those sanctions. So what that means is that Iran's going to break the deal. And Iran is already saying that we're starting to enrich past 20%, which is dangerous, which is nuclear warhead dangerous. So basically, the EU has two options. Either let Iran enrich and become a nuclear state within the Middle East, which is a dangerous proposition, seeing their history against Israel, because they want to blow Israel up. This has come from the prime minister himself, their past prime minister, or release the Ahmadinejad, exactly, the old prime minister of Iran,
president.
I think the president, or the other option is to actually uphold the bargain of the Iran deal, and the European countries give Iran their money by releasing sanctions, by allowing Iran to trade, and therefore allowing Iran to fund extremist groups such as Hezbollah. Even the Iranian ambassador to the UK stated that we are very close to war. And then several officials out of Iran stated that even though the United States may outgun us, now this is important, Iran will fight an asymmetrical warfare, meaning that there are so many people dedicated to Iran's survival that there's militias located in large Muslim majority countries throughout the Middle East that are willing to strike military bases. So
as you mentioned, Hezbollah, the Houthi groups in Yemen,
Exactly. So a lot of Iranian loyalist militias are near key U.S. military bases that they can attack. So even if we think that we're the big stick in the world and we could still beat down Iran in a boots on the ground, war to war, sure, but it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like the Korean conflict. It's going to be more like Vietnam, and it's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. And that's what scares me.
And sometimes it's not even about us. As we were discussing earlier before the podcast, there are people that are our allies that are basically extensions of us. Look at Israel. They're basically rooted in our politics and culture due to how they're as part of the Republican agenda. So again, as we noted, Hezbollah, located primarily in Lebanon, very geographically close to Israel, could easily shoot off missiles that would be a direct threat to Israel. Thankfully, they have the Iron Dome there, but still, they're mostly dealing with the Palestinians and Hamas there, which are a little low tech compared to Hezbollah. So I think that Hezbollah does pose a bigger threat if they are given, direct coordination from the Iranian government to basically attack Israel compared to Hamas. So this would be a different challenge for the Israelis for sure. But why don't we dive in a little deeper in regards to what the forecasting is? Yes, we're talking about the military, military violence that would occur, deaths that would occur. But this is not Iraq. This is not Afghanistan. These people have legitimate militaries that are in place. This will be.
You mean it's not like Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah.
The Iraqi army, when ISIS came to hold, literally dropped their weapons and let the cities get run over by ISIS. So this is not the same. So Iran has a well-established military, and it's gonna basically fight back. It's saying that it's the hegemon in the region, and hegemon just means the big power in the region. So let's take a step back from all the weedsy stuff. At the end of the day, there's not been a single political TV show or documentary that covers the United States, like the presidency or the White House, that hasn't talked about our tenuous relationship with Iran. Iran's always the big boogeyman. It always has been throughout history. Are we going to go into a war or not? What do you think?
Under these circumstances, the one thing we forgot to mention in the background, was the recent event on Thursday night, with Donald Trump sending the missiles, but then calling them out 10 minutes prior.
Exactly, yeah. That's a big one.
I actually do feel like that was a very positive sign. To be honest, I'm surprised Trump came to that conclusion of like saying that it would be disproportionate. You know, shooting down a drone should not equate to 150 people losing their lives. But I'm glad he came to that conclusion. You know, I do see that a positive sign. However, there's still a lot of people that are not on that side. I.e., the John Bolton's, the national security advisor.
It's just funny because we should like he that came out wrong for him. He told us that he was going to send in missiles to destroy what Iranian
like radars and technologies and infrastructures.
Yeah, like something to do with Iranian infrastructure
process.
And no, not their enrichment process. I think it was something different, but we'll look into it. Anyway, he was willing to send in basically jets, like what is this, like fighter jets, to kind of destroy this piece. And he's like, oh no, I backed off of it, and I'm not going, these lives weren't, it's not equivalent to what Iran did to us. And I'm just sitting here thinking, you expect to be rewarded for that? It's funny, Ben Shapiro actually said that this was the wrong move. He should have actually gone in there and attacked Iran, because what he thinks, or Ben Shapiro thinks, is that in Vietnam we did what was called proportional response, where if they would attack us, we would proportionally attack them. And that inevitably that ended up being a bad strategy, because we were overwhelmed and they didn't really care for their losses. So we should have firebombed and destroyed from the beginning. But
the war of attrition,
the war of attrition. But in this day and age, we can't do that, because everything is tied up in that Strait of Hormuz, which is a land area. Basically, it's a seaway where a lot of oil gets traded, and if we attack Iran, they can go after and close up the Strait of Hormuz and cut off a lot of the world's oil supply. And also, we live in a globalized economy. You break one country's ability to focus on their economy, and they have to now focus on their military. That means that everybody else is affected, and we can't just be brash like that.
Yeah, people forget that, the oil industry has led to recessions for America,
Exactly.
Whenever there were crises with Saudi Arabia, like the OPEC protests,
Mm-hmm.
So it's happened before. We've had 2 or 3 recessions related to oil supply. So it's a real issue.
And so at the end of the day, as you, the viewer, should you be worried about Iran? All this weird, wonky stuff, all the things that we talk about, considering history, considering these facts and our relationship with Iran, are we going to war with Iran? Most of the experts say that's not going to happen, because Iran's ambassador to the UK literally sat down with Christian Amanpour with CNN and stated that, look, a conflict could happen. Iran's always been saying that. However, we don't want that. And even Trump stated in multiple press interviews, and not multiple press interviews, but his statements that he's came out to the press and public, that it's not a goal of his to get into a conflict. That's what he pitched on, that I'm not going to be the war hawk. And at the end of the day, I think more flashpoint occurrences like this are going to happen. But in my opinion, I think it's just going to be South China Sea, but in the Gulf, where basically it's going to be, how we have that relationship with China in the South China Sea, where we'll send these little war games. We'll send some destroyers. We'll send some aircraft carriers down there to protect Taiwan. It's the same thing we're going to do in Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. We're already, sending destroyers, sending all these military packages that do these war games and these tactics to try and scare Iran back into shape. And Iran will do the same. But here's what scares me. This has been the most occurrences of flashpoints, almost 3 to 4 that happened in the last week. What people are scared about now is not about those flashpoints doing what they're supposed to do, which is scare off each other. It's about some asshole from the United States or some asshole from the Iranian military makes a miscalculation. It's that miscalculation in a war game that ends up hurting people, hurting lives, which causes wars, because wars have started on less.
And it goes back to the other the other aerial vehicle that was also there too when the drone was shot down. There was another vehicle there, aerial vehicle with 35 servicemen on there. Had the Iranians shot that, Thursday night would have been totally different.
Yeah.
Trump would have likely sent over, may have declared war to some degree, or taken some sort of military offensive measures. Obviously, Congress would not have, depending on what it would have happened specifically, Congress would likely not have approved any declaration of war. That's why they're trying to use the laws from 2001 when we went to Afghanistan, because they realize that's such a hot topic and they don't want anyone to get there. But beyond that, let's go into, what this means for the future of Iran. Like, I feel that I'm a little more dubious of you. I know you're saying what the experts say is saying that they claim that it's unlikely because, the Iranian government has made this rhetoric before saying they want to take these offensive measures, but they never enacted on it, similar to like North Korea, like claiming that they're always going to do it, but they never do. It's like empty words.
Yeah.
But the difference now is Trump. We have someone that's sporadic, that's willing to change his mind back and forth. And I agree. Trump did say those things in the campaign trail that he wants to practice more of a non-interventionist style foreign policy, but the fact is, we see him flip-flop on issues all the time. It wouldn't surprise me if he flip-flopped on this issue. So
yeah, and
that's a critical point.
It just hurts our credibility in the world. Like, fuck the Iran issue. This is bigger than that, because what we see is that, like, anytime we want to make an international deal in the future, whether it be for assets, for hostages, for geopolitical stability, for trying to figure out how we can better encourage good policy throughout, human rights abuses and stuff like that, Trump is not seen as a square dealer in this instance. He's failed Iran, and basically he's saying that Iran was not following parts of the nuclear agreement, and that's why he left. However, he recently said on an interview with George Stephanopoulos that George Stephanopoulos asked Trump, like, look, North Korea, what are we doing there? And Trump was like, well, you know what? I don't think they're going to be building nuclear weapons or anything like that. And George was like, how do you know that? He's like, well, he promised me. And I'm like, Iran has been vetted by inspectors that they're not enriching uranium back in the Obama administration. And you're going off the promise of a dictator that they're not enriching uranium he's making more peace with North Korea, which has been guaranteed to break all their agreements to reduce sanctions. And Iran, on the other hand, has been vetted by independent investigators that they're not enriching uranium. This just makes no sense to me. I think when he met Kim Jong-un, he just was caught by a spell. I have no idea. This is my problem, because it's not just like Trump's an idiot. This is long-lasting destruction of American credibility that really does hurt us, because at the end of the day, we're no longer seen as a square dealer. No one wants to make deals with us.
So
yeah.
Do you want to talk about, like, okay, obviously, like, it's obvious that, like, if there was some sort of military altercation between the United States and Iran, it would be devastating. Millions of lives would most likely be lost, depending on the length and duration of it. But let's talk about, like,
refugees and stuff like that.
So yeah, like, let's talk about refugees. Like, there's already a refugee crisis in Europe going on. That's still going on, but it was kind of slowed down recently due to ISIS from Iraq and Syria and that area in general, and it's flooded all of Europe. There's been a lot of issues in Turkey and Germany taking in those refugees.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you're adding Iranians to the issue, like, it's going to just be a giant catalyst to the issue, because they're already at their maximum capacities. Like, they don't have the, like, resources to, like, deal with this anymore. And the other issue is that, unlike European culture compared to American culture when it comes to migration, there is an issue related to, like, bring in these individuals and letting them assimilate. In Europe, they're actually much more okay with these individuals, like, not assimilating with their culture versus in America, leading them to create their own communities and staying in them, leading to, unfortunately, like, not that many networks to, like, grow and prosper in their communities. Because in the past, when migrants would come in, like, they would be forced to network, and assimilate with people who have been there for long times, that have the connections to grow and prosper economically. But when you're isolating them there, they're going to stay there. And, like, unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult for them to grow out of that poverty that they're coming into fresh off the gate when they enter those European countries. And the other thing it leads to problematically is a growth in the alt-right in Europe. In France, there was election between Marine Le Pen and Macron there. Macron eventually did win, but this gives people like Marine Le Pen another chance of taking on France, of winning those very conservative hardliners that were.
So who's Marie Le Pen? Like, to let the viewers know, Marie Le Pen is this a right winger in France who ran against Emmanuel Macron, who was kind of this, like, centrist liberal guy, and so far Macron won, but he's having a hard time keeping the people at check because the people just disagree with him on a lot of things. He's been supporting large corporations, giving them tax breaks and things of that nature. There's been large protests in Paris and France all throughout, the Yellow Jacket protests, but people don't like Macron, and this just shows how close Marie Le Pen, who was like kind of an anti-immigrant right-wing politician.
And to clarify, I'm not saying that she specifically would run again, but someone like that holds her very position.
Or worse, or even someone who's outright just like anti-immigrant immigration on a legal level. So someone who wouldn't even take refugees or work visas and maybe even violate the Schengen Agreement, which allows a free movement of travel between the European Union. Basically what this means is that if Iran were to go to war, if this conflict broke out, this would just create another Syria, another Yemen, another African-like conflict where it just produces refugees and further foments this kind of idea of anti-immigration because you see all these people in crisis. And at the end of the day, you get a few bad apples from these refugees, which create these giant headline stories, which create massive overblown generalization about who these people are, who these refugees are, and creates space for alt-right and right-wing parties to come into rise in Europe. And basically what I want to say off this is that a lot of this can actually be easily solved by just one thing: UN peacekeepers. UN peacekeepers, their budget is abysmal. Their budget is literally 6.7 billion, and they're over budget by 1.4 billion because they've needed the funds. However, in New York on June 15th, they already stated that, we're super underfunded already. And the reason why peacekeepers are so important is because they protect these large developments that happen in Africa and all these places where they're building roads, building bridges, building hospitals, building infrastructure. And once you have infrastructure, once you have an economy, once you have those things going, you don't have as much conflict because you can defend yourself, because you can educate people, you can help people in hospitals and schools. Another thing is that UN peacekeepers are just good for getting people out of terrible situations and reestablishing them back in their homeland with better, not just camps, but like just creating a safe space for them to rebuild their homes.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying in regards to the impacts of what like the UN peacekeepers do in their
and they're looking
priorities.
to slash their budget.
Unfortunately, though, like I can't really assess like how like impactful they would be because they've always had that low budget, and all those times they've acted in the past, while their intentions were generally okay, I mean they weren't able to do that much because of that low budget. So it's hard for me to like actually predict that we give them that budget if they can actually execute it correctly, handle and manage it correctly. So that's a different discussion. I think you're just assuming that by funding the budget like fully, they're going to get that stuff done. Which I'm not saying they can. I'd say it's more on the probable end than not. But I can't really say it's a guarantee. But you ready for a bold prediction?
What's up?
Okay. Now, before I make this prediction, I'd like to clarify the record. I do not in any way see going to war with Iran as being a good thing. However, this is one potential positive impact that may occur, assuming the area is fully destabilized.
Is this conspiracy Lamar coming out? What is this?
No. Let's talk about the Kurdish people. In the event where Iran is like extremely displaced and to the point where the central government does not have control of some portions of their territory, I think this could be an entry point for the Kurdish people to come in and finally claim an autonomous state for themselves.
Okay. I'm going to stop you right there. There's a few things wrong with that. Obviously, you know that. I think it doesn't get past the death by 1,000 cuts, where the asymmetrical warfare will force the United States to reevaluate a straight up boots on the ground war with Iran that would open up a vacuum for the Kurdish people to come in. Second of all, I don't think it's good for a minority people to take majority control, because here's what happens. You just get ISIS all over again, where the Shiite population within Iraq was given full control post Saddam Hussein, and then the Sunni population within Iraq felt that they were being underrepresented, and that's how you get ISIS, because
that's the problem too. Like you just said it yourself. The problem was that we had three groups in Iraq. You had the Kurds, you had the Sunnis and Shias, and proportionally they were all in like different territories. The Kurds were in northern Iraq, the Shias were in the middle portion, and the Shiites were in the southern part. And there were actually a lot of conversations about just creating an Iraq that was three different countries that separated two, because had you done that, there would have been a probability that those conflicts would not have occurred because they had their own individual countries. So yeah, those were discussions that were being held in prior and when the whole Iraq debacle was happening. Of like maybe we should separate the three countries. And again, going back to the whole Kurdish becoming having their own autonomous state. Um, I don't necessarily think that for them to create their sovereign state, that in this plan that they wouldn't necessarily have to take like territories of northern Iran for them to create their territory. I'm just saying with all like this, military conflict happening, they could potentially take a portion of northern Iraq, claim sovereignty.
Northern Iraq.
Yeah. You don't think it's going to bleed into northern Iraq? The border, geographically speaking? Do you want to pull up a map for you?
No, I mean, I'm just confused because like you're talking about a power vacuum that creates a conflict in Iran that's going to bleed into Iraq, and then the Kurdish can take over. It's like a Venn diagram of conflicts that you're trying to
That's
get.
the
I don't know.
problem. Like,
What
there's
is your obsession with the Kurdish people? I mean, I'm sure they're great, but like,
No, I'm just saying that this would create a potential opportunity for them to create an
what
autonomous
wouldn't?
state.
Like, I mean, come on. This is very conspiratorial, Lamar.
I'm not being conspiratorial. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
It's a very slim possibility. And so to tie it back all together, so just a recap of the international section of this podcast, we talked about Iran. And we talked about how a conflict would ensue. It would create a refugee crisis. So we don't want that. And it doesn't seem, according to Iran's ambassador to the UK, he doesn't want that either. And also, the United States has stated that they don't want a conflict like that as well. So with that being said, I don't think a conflict is imminent. However, a miscalculation, some asshole military guy from the United States or some asshole Iranian guy, Iranian military person makes a mistake. That's how conflicts start. It's through mistakes. Wars have started on less. World wars have started on less. So now we've kind of beat Iran as like the dead horse. We basically, what am I saying? We've beaten Iran, that dead horse, that topic, like crazy. So we kind of analyze Iran on multiple levels, even all the way to the end, even when a war with Iran would create refugees. So now let's talk about something
2020?
domestic. 2020 Democratic debates. The 2020 Democratic candidates are going to have a debate soon. When are they going to have the debates?
From my understanding, 26th and 27th. So
We're going to have
next week, yeah.
And what the media is calling the kiddie pool debate versus the big boy debate, where we got.
To be fair, it was done randomly, so
Yeah, randomly. This is my conspiratorial thing, where I think a lot of people believe that it wasn't random. A lot of people believe that they put Elizabeth Warren as the only heavyweight on the second stage, and it's kind of like, what are the actual lineups for the debates?
So if you look at the lineups for like the first one on the 26th, it appears like the big people that are that have the best polling was number one was Elizabeth Warren. There's people like Tulsi Gabbard, which I think are in the higher range of candidates there. We have Cory Booker's up there as well.
So this is the first night. June 26th is going to be Bill de Blasio, New York mayor, Tim Ryan, Julian Castro, Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, failed Texas politician. I don't know why he's on the damn stage. Amy Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, she's representative from Hawaii, Jay Inslee, and John Delaney. So pretty much the big names you got to watch out for on June 26th is Bill de Blasio, Julian Castro, Cory Booker, Warren, O'Rourke, and Gabbard. Klobuchar is kind of in there. Inslee's in there.
Klobuchar, bro, no chance.
Yeah, she has some recognition, but like other than that,
no.
But basically, it's going to be a big fight between Warren, Booker, Gabbard, Castro, and de Blasio. That's good.
Castro's gonna just smile the entire time. What are you talking about? He's not.
I know, but he's got the huge name recognition after he.
What name recognition? He was HUD department. What the hell is that?
I know, but he's been on Bill Maher. He's doing the media tour. I mean, you cannot say that for most of these people. Here's where we have the heavy hitters. June 27th, we have Williamson, who don't know. So we have Marianne Williamson, John Hickenlooper, Andrew Yang, which is a personal favorite of mine. Pete Buttigieg is a great guy. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, Michael Bennet, and Eric Swalwell. So the heavy hitters in this one are going to be Biden, Sanders, Harris, and Buttigieg. And pretty much that is. And then the kiddie pool is going to, within the night two, is going to be starting off with Andrew Yang and Kirsten Gillibrand, Michael Bennet, Eric Swalwell, Williamson, and I think, did I put Buttigieg in the higher tier the second day?
I think you might have, yeah.
Yeah. So,
are you familiar with Marianne Williamson?
No, I don't know. What's so interesting about her? I actually don't know anything about her.
So she used to be the former spiritual advisor to Oprah.
Oh yes, I do know about this.
So
yes,
did I tell the story about what happened when she was doing the CNN town hall?
Remind me of it.
So she's being asked the question of whether or not she's, asked Oprah, any inquiries regarding, running for president, and she responds kind of like vaguely saying like, well, I did send an email to her, and then the person that's hosting, follows up like, did you respond? And she's
Did
like,
Oprah respond? Oh yeah, Oprah did not respond to her email.
like that's so
she did
sad,
not
dude.
get an endorsement from Oprah's spiritual advisor.
You're running for president, and your big thing is your occupation of who you were advising, and that person doesn't even endorse you.
Oh my god.
You've got a hard road ahead of you, but good luck.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Here's how I think night one's gonna pan out. I think Beto O'Rourke is gonna charm a few people. I think Elizabeth Warren is really gonna invigorate the crowd. Tulsi Gabbard will kind of come out level-headed, but
so I think you're going a little too far. Okay, I think for both these debates, they're not going to go hard hitting punches. Okay, they're not trying to do that.
Yeah,
like, this
you're
is
right.
too early. Like
no,
maybe
actually, I think this wouldn't this encourage them to actually.
This one's just to like bring out their name, their policies. That said, no punches.
Really, I think the earlier the primary debates happen, the earlier the primary stuff, the crazier the policy proposals are.
I think. Well. Strategically, I do think it's better that like they actually go and attack
because
each other right
because
now.
it's the primaries. They're trying to get their base, and then
they're not. They're also going to tell them, "Oh no, just like introduce yourselves." But if they don't like actually do that, like I do feel like they'll do well better. Like I feel Tulsi is going to be much more aggressive the first night. If she does that, I think she will enjoy a nice boost in the polling the next month or whenever they do text polling.
I disagree, man. I think they're gonna go hardcore. I think they're gonna like try to really plug their big policy goal. Like Andrew Yang, he has this universal basic income. Bernie Sanders. First night. Okay, so I think like we see Elizabeth Warren. She's going to go after her myriad of policy goals, like basically anti-Trump. Tulsi Gabbard is going to go for her hardcore, we need peace in this country and I can bring it together type of situation. Beto O'Rourke is going to go for his myriad of like how he... I don't know I don't know what really Beto's O'Rourke is about. I haven't done much research on him because I really don't care for him. He's a failed politician. He didn't beat Ted Cruz, and I don't know why we're giving him brownie points for not being able to beat Ted Cruz, and therefore now you're valid to run for president.
Just sit down and rerun again for Senate if you can.
Yeah, rerun again for Senate. There's there's plenty of people with more experience. Like I don't know why this guy who couldn't beat Ted Cruz is coming, because that's all I see it as. Like basically, what was his name? He's running in the Republican primaries. The guy from Florida, Marco Rubio. When he lost his own state, that was like the most embarrassing thing ever. And I think this is going to happen to Beto O'Rourke too. He's going to lose his own state because like, even though the support might be there, and even though he almost won, the way in which he beat Ted Cruz was so incredibly close, and kudos to him, but he's not there yet.
To be fair though, with in regards to Beto, I feel that most of the support he had initially when he first started his campaign went to Pete Buttigieg, and with all this controversy regarding the police brutality going on in the city of South Bend, I feel that if Pete's numbers start to go, they will directly transfer over to Beto.
Yeah,
that's
I think the circle really is like Beto or Pete. That's what I've seen from my friends. That's what I've seen on my Facebook timeline.
Because they're the only two candidates that like seem to have like literally no policy proposals and just like platitudes. Like, oh, like we're gonna like just be anti-Trump. Like, no shit, Sherlock. Like everyone on the campaign's anti-Trump. We don't need that. Like, tell us why you're the better one in terms of the policies. But like, they're just keeping it vague, and I think they're doing that so they can pivot in the general election.
Yeah, and you'll even notice in the podcast, and this is a running theme. Like, we may talk about Trump in a context of his policies and his statements, but we'll never actually say like, fuck Trump or anything like that. Because like at the end of the day, that's so old and so tired. We just want to know like what is the analysis here? What is the repercussion of this? At the end of the day, all these other podcasts and all these other media outlets, that's what we're trying to break the mold of. So now going back to it.
And also the other thing we're not taking into account as a factor is like what type of question can we ask, Because if there are questions like, let's say about climate change that are like the primary questions that are being noted here, like Jay Inslee will shine because that's his whole thing, like, fighting global climate change, former governor of Washington. Or if it's all about like military intervention, and it might be with all the Iran stuff, like Tulsi Gabbard's going to have a field day, because that is all she does.
Yeah, she's a foreign policy person, straight up. For night two, I think the heat check the what the Ringer calls the Dion Waiters Award, or like the kind of the guy who's gonna break out, the guy who's gonna do really well. I think, to be honest, we all think it's Andrew Yang. He's gonna do well, but here's my thing. I don't think Andrew Yang is gonna do that great because I think he's been on the campaign trail. I've seen multiple videos of him. I'm a big fan, but I don't think he does really well outside of universal basic income. He has a lot of policy proposals. I think Eric Swalwell is actually going to break out because hear me out. Eric Swalwell has been on Bill Maher multiple times.
For clarification, he is actually our congressman in our district. So.
I know. And Eric Swalwell's, for clarification and for full transparency, but Eric Swalwell is going to break out for a few reasons. I think the first is that he was the first Democratic person to announce publicly after the Mueller report came out. Can you let me finish, Lamar? Go. For fuck's sake. He was the first Democratic representative that came out after the Mueller report came out that he's like, yeah, we're going to subpoena Mueller. And his whole approval rating, not his approval rating, the polling data showed that he was doing really well. He became kind of the face of the anti-Mueller stuff because he was like, look, I'm going to be the one to subpoena Mueller. Watch for it next week. And Eric Swalwell has been on at least the people who really follow DC politics, the policy side of really getting Mueller to come out and try and beat Donald Trump to an impeachment level offense. So that's what I see when it comes to the questions regarding the ability for Eric Swalwell to respond when it comes to should we impeach Donald Trump? What do we do about Donald Trump? But at the end of the day, I mean,
can I respond to that?
Yes, you can respond to Eric Swalwell. Go ahead.
Right, so I think everything you mentioned is the exact reason he's not going to do well. Okay. He's milking the whole Mueller narrative. Okay. But we all know the whole point of milking the Mueller narrative is to be anti-Trump, and that's everyone on the campaign. Like, there's all these candidates are anti-Trump, So milking that is not going to really provide any unique advantage to you because that's
but that's
and the only thing he's unique about is gun violence, and he's not even doing that.
No, I disagree because that's like saying everybody's doing politics podcasts, and that's no, he hates Trump. But there's substance to his hate. There's actual force behind it. He's the only
same as the others. What's unique about
I mean his arguments may be the same, but his actions are actually different than everybody else.
He's on the intelligence committee. He has to talk about that stuff. That's what he does.
Well, that's his position, and he's leveraging it like everybody else on this field is leveraging their history and their position on committees. So you can't just say because he's in that committee he gets that leverage to subpoena Mueller. I'm just saying that he has more to offer on that. He has more to offer on that topic.
There are a lot of questions related to NRA and gun rights.
I mean, obviously, all these guys are really good spinners. They're going to spin it back to what they know and what their history is.
Let's backtrack a little bit with Andrew Yang. So, you're right. With Andrew Yang, his big issue is
we expect him to be a breakout kind of guy.
His issue is that people perceive him only as a one policy person.
But he's got a bunch of stuff.
But he's not. He's actually very diverse. If you look at his website.
Yeah.
Very unique ways of resolving things related to global climate change, ideas I had never thought of in the past. He's mentioned some ideas such as potentially putting up satellites to reflect sun rays, that things like moving the glaciers to colder areas of the water so it doesn't melt as fast. I'm I never knew that was an option, but okay, I'm down for that. If it slows down the rate of global climate change, let's do it. So I think the big thing for Andrew Yang is actually not to focus on UBI as much, but to show he's not just a one policy-oriented candidate, and to diversify and show he's a sufficient presidential candidate that has a position on all the issues.
Yeah, I think people like Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris are really speaking from an emotional front. This is such a revolting thing that we need to change. We need to get this man out of office. And Andrew Yang is the only one that's speaking to the surface level causal reasons why Trump became in office. All these Buttigieg, these Joe Biden, the Bernie Sanders, the Kamala Harrises, and the Kirsten Gillibrand are speaking towards a kind of this kind of passionate, emotional, deeper level of the American psyche of why we could allow a symptomatic problem like Trump to happen. And then Andrew Yang is no, this is a very straightforward, cut and dry economic resource scarcity problem that we have that we need to fix with something like a UBI and a myriad of other policies. And I think, honestly, past the bullshit, focus grouped phrases that all these people have been touted. I think the reason why Andrew Yang is a rising star is because like he speaks to a lot of just the surface level economic depravity that he has. Like no other person can slap their hands and say, "Look, UBI. Like I'm just going to give you $1,000." And so many people responded to that. Thousands came out for him. This virtual nobody, this political neophyte. And I think that was crazy to see. And I can't wait to see what he does on the debate stage. I think we just expect him to be a breakout star because in the campaign trail, he's been a breakout star.
Like, imagine if they get a question about global climate change and it goes to Andrew Yang. Those responses I gave you, like people hearing that, they'd be like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like that's going to be his moment to shine when he brings up those policy proposals that are so unique that no one's even heard of, you know?
I know. And there's been so many videos and so many think pieces on Vox and Huffington Post and all that bullshit where, okay, Vox and Huffington Post are not bullshit, but some of the writers write like some crazy shit. Like, for example, this Asian stereotype of being a smart dude and, you know, always trying to be the smart guy in the room and stuff like that. Like, oh, you're Asian, you know math. And then he's like, yeah, I'm Asian. I know math. I'm gonna literally put a hat that says math, and then he just sells it. He just falls so hard into the stereotype. You know, I mean, it's. I mean, it is racist, but it works. I mean, like we're people. Well, I'm South Asian. You're Middle Eastern. Like we have been the receiving end of that stereotype as well. Like, yeah, I thought you were Asian or Indian, or aren't you supposed to be smart? And then Andrew Yang is like, you know what? Sure, yeah. If Trump won because people say that he's a racist and racists voted for him, then why don't I vote because you guys think I'm smart? Like he's playing both sides. He's playing like, you know what, if America really is a racist country, maybe that's what it takes to win. But I don't think he's going for that. I think he's just saying that, look, I am a smart dude. I'm a technocrat. I do research things like climate change and come up with those reflective sun ray technology to battle climate change. Like that's such a technocrat wonky plan to solve for climate change. So at the end of the day, I think Andrew Yang is a technocrat. A technocrat just basically means you consult experts to produce your policies. You don't really, you know, kind of play the political game.
So let's talk about who has the most to lose now.
Who has the most to lose? What do you mean?
So obviously, you know, the top contenders right now are Bernie, Joe Biden, and Elizabeth Warren, you know, in terms of polling numbers nationally.
Biden, Bernie.
I think Biden is going to take a big downward slump after this.
It's whoever's willing to go that low. It's whoever's willing to comment
but
on.
The reason I think Biden's position is going to go down is because he still is like coming up with no policy proposals. That he's got like a few, but like he's nowhere near the amount of, let's say, Elizabeth Warren, like that's just, or Bernie Sanders, you know. So if he gives like very vague responses every time to like a question saying, "What are you going to do?" it's going to look really, really bad. It depends on how the question obviously is given by the host of the debate. But if he's giving those vague responses every time, it's going to show, and the American people are going to see it.
Yeah, no, I definitely get it. I think his name and his likeness are going to ride out only so far for him. But at the end, like so many American people are getting so caught up on the news. They're trying everything they can, watching podcasts like ours. Thank you for liking and commenting and subscribing. But they're watching podcasts. They're really engaging. And what that shows me is that they're so quick to catch bullshit that it's just ridiculous. Like, for example, I think more and more, I mean, the biggest example is Trump. I don't even know why I'm working so hard to find an example. Like, people are just done with focus grouped, polled opinions and data coming out of these politicians. And now it's more about just like authenticity and realness. And at the end of the day, I still think Biden is riding off of, look, the Obama years were great. Don't you want a continuation of that? And pretty much all of his policy proposals are just going to be Obama throwback hits. And in my opinion, that actually might just work. Because did you listen to the 90-minute long Trump campaign re-election speech? No new policy proposal in his re-election speech. It's all just the greatest hits. It's all just immigration.
Hold up, are we saying it'll work assuming he's the nominee?
No, assuming he's the primary. Like assuming now, I think the greatest hit stuff resonates with old LA liberals, old, you know.
Well, now that talks about turnout, you know, like who's going to turn out. And I think like if it's like Bernie's there, you know, he's going to invigorate the younger people to show up, you know.
So my uncle and aunt are old school liberals. They don't really believe in the hardcore progressive ideas, but they're nowhere near Trump. Like they're anti-Trump. They don't vote. They don't anything like that.
Vote for the Biden.
So if people like Biden represent a kind of common ground liberalism, I think people will turn out, dude. As much as we like really crazy, innovative ideas, technocratic ideas that come out of Andrew Yang, I think people are going to turn out for Biden, and they're going to like Trump.
And
like Yang.
And again, this, as I mentioned, it's about turnout. All these polls that are being done regarding, like, oh, Biden's going first, and Bernie and Elizabeth are like tied for second or third, depending on which poll you're looking at.
Right.
The problem with all these polls is that they're using traditional methods that involve, like, saying that individuals over the age of 65 will encompass like a significant portion of, the voter turnout when election day comes, which is true. I'm not denying that. But I think they're severely downplaying, the amount of like millennials that'll be participating in those voters, depending on who like the nominee is. For example, like, let's keep it real. Like, there's going to be much more turn up for among millennials if Bernie Sanders is the, nominee versus Joe Biden.
I think the millennial vote is important, and I don't think that was really missing in Hillary's election. I think we could have done a lot better.
I significantly think it was.
I don't think just because what percentage of millennials do you think it would be enough to turn Hillary into, especially the battleground states we were looking at? Are the millennials, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Florida, like all these places, like, do you really think the millennials were the difference in those battleground states? I don't think so. I think it's great that we have the millennial vote, but like, it's just listen to the tea leaves. They're all saying it's that centrist, undecided swing voters that are going to decide the next election. And as much as I hate to say it, as much as I hate to read it, Biden's the guy. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with the greatest hits. It's just Biden has a checkered history and a checkered past that many of the Biden fans watching may not like me pointing out. But hey, we were pointing this stuff out, at least privately, at least even on Facebook Live, like that Hillary's not the greatest person either. We were pointing out stuff about Bernie that we don't like. We're here to criticize everybody. So right now, do you unilaterally endorse any candidate? Because I sure don't.
There are, among the 20 plus candidates, there are probably like 4 or 5 that I'm leaning towards. But like, yeah, like for example, there's some people like I definitely.
I mean, on each stage you get like 4 or 5.
For example, like I'm definitely probably against Joe Biden. Again, when I say I'm against, it doesn't mean when it comes to like if they become the nominee, I will support them. Okay, whoever it is, But during the primary, I will not support him at all unless he becomes a nominee.
I think it's just we need to revert back to good old, let's get someone younger. Let's get someone like Obama was one of the youngest presidents we've ever known, if not the youngest president to be sworn in. And I think he got a lot done. I mean, it took a toll on his body. He even commented on how it's such a stressful job. Like, so I think Biden's experience and his likeness is important. And at the end of the day, I think we're just gonna have to wait and see, and we're gonna do a podcast on that as well. So this is kind of on the 2 days of the debate. So we're just going to kind of live watch the podcast, so the June 26th and 27th. So we're gonna try and watch the actual debates and kind of live comment for you. We won't be live ourselves. We'll just be commenting back on it, and then we're going to reflect back on who really won. And all at the end of the day, these are debates, and then we're both debaters. We're going to rank the debaters. We're going to see who did well, and we're going to do it.
What issues they won on specifically in terms of questions. But
exactly.
Yeah, I don't think every candidate is going to be asked a question, like asked to respond. Probably like once they ask a question, like 3 or 4 of them will respond to a certain question.
All right, so we've broken an hour. We've kind of beaten all the topics to the dead horse. So yeah, that's it for the first episode of the Misinformed Truth Podcast.
Thank you for watching. Please, we definitely need to like and subscribe if possible, since we're doing this and this is our first episode. And please tell us what we can do to improve. Write in the comments and below and let us know what you liked, didn't like, and what you want to see in the future.
Yeah, and everything you see here, the table, hell, even the computers, the mic arms, the background, everything is subject to change. Since we're so new, we're coming from the ground up. I mean, I agree with Lamar's sentiment that we can change, we can grow, and we can get better.
Yeah, we're probably going to have a totally different setup next time.
Yeah. All right. Catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you.